It is good to have you back if you're just joining us. This is Firecrackers and we're just about to get started. And the topic for today is effect of insecurity on Nigeria's education system and the education sector. So I'm going to be starting with Comrade Akintoye Azan, the NUT Lagos chairman, because your union said that they might withdraw teachers from schools if this issue of insecurity persists. So, how do you assess that conclusion of the NUT think that they will withdraw teachers from classrooms if issue of insecurity does not stop in Nigeria?
Um, Thank you very much. That pronouncement of the president, which of course represents the voice of teachers across the nation, is a statement to now involve the teachers outside the affected zone so that we can act based on that statement of injury to one is an injury to all. Ordinarily, the teachers within the affected zones were already displaced. Majority of them are no longer going about their teaching activities in the affected schools. So if the NUT is coming out with such threats, is to actually galvanize attention from the government to do the needful, so that those who are yet to be affected, probably down south here, we will be able to see it as a national crisis whereby everyone has to be involved in creating the necessary attention for this menace. So by the time we all realize that it is an injury to one, which should be an injury to all, then maybe those who actually expected to act within the confine of the mandate they have as a government in ensuring the security of life and property within our nation will rise to the task.
Okay, all right, but from your point of view, do you think the government is doing enough these past few days when we started having this upsurge in kidnapping of the kidnappers targeting schools? Do you think that the government is doing enough, or how would you rate how well they've been doing so far?
Oh, I'm a realist. I don't usually condemn people arbitrarily. There is no one who will be saddled with a responsibility, no matter how he find himself there, even if it is rigorous, he will still have in mind that he want to make an impact. So definitely, no one in government would like to be seen as outright failure. Sometimes interests, clash in such a way that it affects the outcome. That does not mean that they won't have intention to address the issue. Now that we are all crying, our submission can only be that their best for now is not good enough. So I won't subscribe to the fact that the government is not doing anything. No government can be so irresponsible not to make an attempt to solve a very glaring, problem. There might be a clash, I repeat, of interest that may necessitate the fact that they wouldn't move at the pace expected of them to address the issue. Then you said in the recent, how do I assess their performance? Especially if I can use the Kirby scenario as an example. You listen to Comrade Adam Oshiomhole, an earlier speaker at the floor of Senate, pointing accusing finger on why the troops were removed from that affected zone for that incident to occur. It is on that note that I want to comment that there is likely conspiracy based on the class of interest I earlier mentioned. And there is this particular theory that sometimes when you are overwhelmed by a challenge and people are expecting so much, it is a strategy sometimes that you now created that similar problem that people are complaining about, that you have been unable to resolve. You create that similar problem with a view to provide solution to it, so that people will now have a change of mind, that if you could not resolve the one of the past, at least now that the hue and cry is huge, another one has recently happened and you were able to address it. So it's a theory whereby you try to divert or distract the followers, create similar problem. Already you have the solution. So before they cry foul, the solution came. And that will now make people to feel that, hey, something is happening. So otherwise, what has happened based on the allegation that the troops were withdrawn and these students were carted away, and few days after, they were brought back safe and sound. And up till now, nobody has given the detail about how they were rescued. So I think that somebody is working on that theory. That's just my perception.
All right, thank you so much for that. And now to Mrs. Onito. If we are to look at the situation of education in Nigeria, we've often been having crises of out-of-school children. And in light of this insecurity and kidnapping of school students, the federal government directed that some unity schools be shut down, especially in areas affected. So how do you perceive that move of shutting down schools in areas that were affected by insecurity? So now the kids will not be going to school because of fear of kidnapping or fear for their lives. How do you assess that?
First, I would like to say that when a child is kidnapped, the signal it sends to the community is, let's withdraw all our children. Our children are not safe. We cannot continue to send our children to school. Or rather, my child be illiterate than they be kidnapped. And so this kind of crisis, this education crisis, because that's what I see. I mean, this has, in addition to it being a national challenge, it has turned to be a critical education crisis. And with Nigeria being one of the countries with the highest number of out-of-school children, in fact, at the moment, I think we're number one, this has really led to increase in that number. And with this particular situation, it has, affected the entire education ecosystem. So classrooms are shrinking, teachers are leaving. I mean, NUT pronouncing, the threat is already just to buttress what is already happening. Teachers are leaving the profession. We're experiencing the highest teacher shortage challenge in Nigeria at the moment. Out-of-school children numbers are increasing. Parents are so afraid. Even down south, everyone is afraid. And right now, schools are even closing earlier than usual, the schools that are even down south. So shutting down the schools, it was a good move because we do not know where something else would happen. But, shutting down, then what? What is our education in emergency strategy? As these schools were shut down, did they continue learning at home? Nigeria is already experiencing over 70% learning poverty. We know that when COVID happened, we had to adjust. But then we thought, COVID is a health emergency. But this is an emergency as well. So as a country, what is our education in emergency strategy? As we shut down all the unity schools, are the children learning at home? What infrastructure do we have as a country when emergency happens? How do the children continue to learn? That is something that I did not see clearly articulated within this scenario. I mean, in Lagos, for instance, we've had riots that have lasted for 1 week and children had to go home. What is our strategy? We know as a country that we would have emergencies beyond the likes of a pandemic or riot. This is something similar, but what are we doing? What is our strategy? Have we articulated something that would ensure that children continue to learn beyond just that? And it pains me so much that the children are the ones at the receiving end. And we do not think about their mental health, their stability, their willingness to go back to school. The trauma is even more for the children. And so I say that this challenge is an entire education ecosystem challenge, and we need to find a sustainable solution and move beyond just, the drama, the politics, the conspiracy, and take the child and say, what are we doing to our future? Because that is what it is. I mean, even my kids that are not involved in another school, they're asking, why are we closing early? We had other things to do, exams are being rushed, everyone is scared. People are starting to rethink Japa because they don't think that they're safe. People are moving their investment out of Nigeria because everyone is panicking. So it is for us to say, as a country, how are we securing our children? How are we securing our future?
All right, but big data tells me that schools are being attacked. It's not the first time it is happening, but this is the first time in a long time that would have our schools being invaded and children would be carted away. Arms will be coming to teachers' way, and sadly, even the one that happened recently, the vice principal of the school lost their life in that sad incident. So going forward, if, like you said, now kids are at home, there is no plan for continuation of their education. If you were to give the federal government an advice, or even if it is the parents now, how do you think these kids, despite the fact that they are out of the four walls of schools, how do you think they could still continue learning and they won't be left behind? It's not going to delay them unnecessarily.
This is not something, I say that it's not rocket science. Children are learning in Syria and there is full-blown war. We don't want a full-blown war, but their children learning. And so we also need to, beyond just telling the children to go home, we need to ensure as a country that we have an emergency strategy for learning, to ensure that learning continues. We have seen what COVID brought with it, and we learned from COVID, but did we sustain that learning? In terms of emergencies like this, how else could the children learn? Infrastructure, we need to ensure that we provide opportunities for these children to continue to learn at home. We know that most of these children might not have access to internet, but when they do, we need to ensure that we have online classes ongoing for them. We need to use low tech, so are there TV classes, radio classes, to ensure that they are able to continue to learn? Can they send workbooks to them to ensure that they continue to work at home? Has the school collaborated with the parents to ensure that learning can be supported or supplemented by parents? What else can we do to ensure that learning goes on for these children? And for me, it is also, how do we ensure that even after we solve all of this, when they go back to the classroom, they would meet teachers? I'm telling you, the way teachers are leaving the profession, we already have an acute teacher shortage, but with this, many other teachers are, we're looking at the profession to say, if I'm not safe, being a teacher, then can I find something else to do? Can I use this, training as a teacher for something else, for another career? So we also need to start to motivate our teachers. We need to think differently about our teachers, because for the child to continue to learn, the teacher is the most important factor. And so we need to ensure that we're motivating our teachers and we're supporting them to even support the children while they are home right now, because they can also provide additional support. And even our school leaders, like you mentioned, the vice principal lost their life. during this process. So how are we even supporting our school leaders? Many times we talk about teachers, but even our school leaders, principals, vice principals, teachers, head teachers, how are we working with them to ensure that they are also providing the support, required for continued learning for the children? But there are many strategies. I would not want to talk about it. We learned with COVID. What did we do with that learning? And how are we ensuring that in any type of emergency, we can deploy the right kind of interventions that will ensure that our children continue to learn?
Okay, all right. Thank you so much for that. And Comrade Hassan, if we are to look at how teachers are faring in southwestern Nigeria, or let's use Lagos for example, how are the teachers reacting to this issue of insecurity? Because if we think that, oh, it's still in northern Nigeria, it might take a while to get to southern Nigeria, that might be a joke on all of us. But from your end, how are the teachers coping with the state of insecurity in the land?
It's a very difficult question to ask, to answer rather, because he who knows where the soup pinches, that is when you can actually provide solution. For those of us in the south, especially in Lagos, I think there is no way we can put mouth, as they say in Lagos pidgin English. We find ourselves in a society that so much is invested into security. For years there is a fund that we call a security trust fund. That time we never knew that our situation can get up to this level. So with that security trust fund in Lagos, the government has been able to mobilize funds from private and corporate organizations so that we can all make, input into how we ensure that our security network works in Lagos. So the environment is safe. So the teacher feels safe in Lagos. You hardly hear any issue of kidnapping. Even the corporate bodies now, they now have that belief that they need to contribute more into that fund, because hardly can you hear about bank robbery again in Lagos. So when your bank is being robbed, you lose so much than what you even contribute to the trust fund. So as for me, teachers in Lagos, they might not be in best position to actually evaluate the situation there. But the fact is that based on mobility of labor, you can't live, you can't stay in a very threatened environment. Labor is not a fixed asset. So it is easy and easier self to move labor from one supply zone to another demand zone. So teachers have been displaced. So they have moved, from those zones. Recently the Lagos is embarking on mass recruitment of teachers. If you see the number of applicants, definitely this is the effect of what is happening in this zone. People are moving down to secure, job in a better environment. So while even in the context of the whole nation, many Nigerians are even still thinking of leaving the country, talk less of staying in a threatened zone. So it's a very serious issue. And I think my sister has addressed virtually what is needed to be done. I listened to our distinguished senators, trying to trivialize the issue by now thinking of probably enlisting kidnapping within the content of terrorism. When you even want to review law, the process, entail, passing through stages. Is that the immediate solution? One will expect leaders who are up and doing by now, talking about how to address the emergency situation. Some of the issues being raised by my sister, that while they are at home, that the school are closed? How do we engage teachers? How do we engage the students in such a way that even if their absolute learning cannot take place, how will it not elude them totally, you know? But because they knew that over time, what they ought to have done in terms of provision of infrastructure that will make whatever, you know, solution we want to provide feasible, they know that we have failed in that area. Because if you want to engage students online now, for instance, in the research part, you can't even purchase data as it used to be. The electricity is there, that even if you have data, but you could not charge your phone or whatever instrument you want to use to access the learning. So we have left so many things undone that to even address the emergency becomes so difficult. And we must learn from this, that, hey, it is either we learn to live in our country and solve the problem of this country. No matter the privilege we have, that privilege tomorrow will soon become an illusion. It is a disgrace that leaders from this country will leave the soil of this nation to seek for medical care and die there, and so much money will be spent to bring them down, when some of these funds can be injected into the system to be able to take care of the rich and poor. When you think that you are denying the poor of certain rights and privileges, you are indirectly denying yourself, because you cannot remain on top forever. After all, where will all of us end? In the grave.
So criticism have gone to our lawmakers that perhaps the reason they are not taking this with full gravity is because most of them, their children are not even schooling in Nigeria. And there was one time that they tried to pass a bill banning politicians, lawmakers, political officers from having their kids school outside the country. Do you think that perhaps if that were to be enforced, perhaps we might be having changes in the education sector, especially concerning issue of security?
You said they were trying. And the fact is that since when have they been trying? Such a policy will never see the light of the day.
It didn't.
Ordinarily, it ought to be one of the simplest decisions anybody can take, with a caveat that once you occupy political office, then everything about you within that period of time has to go public. In terms of education, health, you have to go public. But when you leave the office, if you have your phone, because society should be run in such a way that based on choice. If you are an individual that you work for your legitimate money, you are free to seek medical care or education or anywhere you desire across the globe. But once you rise to occupy a public office, then that policy or law should be there. Because if you say, okay, if you are there, because some of them who bring up, you know, excuse that, what if they are spending the money? But we know that in this country, it is difficult to track how people get money. Somebody who before he goes into government has nothing, and within very few years in office, he has amassed so much wealth. Difficult to track. So if it is easy to track the way people make money when they are in government, that, oh, this money is legitimately made, then you can spend your money anyhow, but not in a system that we all agree that is corrupt. Because I don't think there's anybody who will say that he is not of the opinion that our system is endemic with corruption. And I think that is the reason why we feel that, that law should be in place. Ordinarily, in a working society, there is no need for such decision. You're supposed to have free right of how you spend your money and where you spend it. So, but it's because of the situation we find ourselves. There will never be political will to put that in place, arising from this argument of I am an individual, I'm entitled to spend my money anywhere. But there is need for it.
All right, thank you so much for that answer, Mrs. Sonito. When it comes to securing our schools, especially in areas that are endangered, when it comes to issue of security, there is fear of insecurity might get to their places. If, let's say, like the federal government feels that children should not be out of school for long, and then they are telling the children that it's okay to go back to school, how would you like to see the school being guarded that might give you peace of mind? Okay, it's definitely. If these kids are going to school, then there should not be any issues. They are in safe hands.
Um, this is a very difficult one because, like I said, this is a national challenge and an education emergency. So, in some of these communities, the community itself is also threatened. And so, it is school, it is the entire community. And so, for me, to feel that the school is safe, I need to also feel that the community is safe. The parents need to, also work hand in hand with the government, the way they would guide their farms, guide their assets. We also need to ensure that as part of, engaging the community, guarding the schools should also be part of what we enshrine in communities today to say a school is an asset as well. We also need to look out for schools as we look out for our farms or look out for our banks or our other assets. Because the schoolhouses are our future, it houses our children. And so when we start to look at that, we also see it as every citizen's responsibility to be able to ensure that they speak up when they start to see things that are happening around the school. But to your question of really guarding the school, for children to go back, like I said, it's so unfortunate that the children are the ones at the receiving end at the moment. Because I can't imagine, but if I were to put myself in the shoes of the children, I can't imagine remembering being kidnapped in an environment and walking back into that environment and someone telling me that it is safe. And so, a lot of parents have even decided they're not taking their children back to school. And I see this even hitting the girl child the more. The girl child, they're going to take them away. The early marriages will start to happen in the north where they're in. They start to do farm labor, and all of those things will start to happen. So for me to even feel that the school is safe, it has to be heavily guarded, right? There has to be, many policies minus policies implementation. So I belong to the Safe Schools Committee for Lagos State. And there are a lot of things, a lot of different government security mechanisms. So it's not just the police, it's not just the army, it's not, we need to deploy everything that is possible to ensure that these schools are safe. We also need to ensure that, because these people are coming with, machinery that are sometimes even heavier than what our people are carrying, our security officers are carrying. So we need to ensure that we are really guarding the schools. We speak with the community. Early warning signs. We need to also ensure that when we send something, we say something. When we see something, we say something. And we're able to ensure that these children, and not just the children, the teachers, the school leaders, because this is an ecosystem challenge now. It's beyond just kidnapping the child. It is, injury to the teachers. It is death to the school leaders as well. And so the entire ecosystem needs to be fortified. And we need to ensure that our entire security infrastructure is put into place to ensure that these children are learning. However, if we are unable to do that and, ensure the community is safe and the school is safe, what are we doing to deploy other methods to ensure that our children are learning despite not being in the four walls of the school. That is the key, because things will continue to happen. It might be flood tomorrow that will make the children, not be in school. And so, what are we doing as a nation to ensure that our education and emergency strategy works? We're able to deploy infrastructure. We're able to deploy different forms of strategies to ensure that these children are learning. And so that's, the way I would see that. I mean, without physical security infrastructure, because the trauma is just too much. But then we also need to pair that with a lot of, trauma counseling, a lot of, mental health support. Many people say, oh, they are children. My goodness, I mean, this kind of trauma, you can't take it away from a child. And so they need to be supported, not just to go back to school safely, but mentally go back to school and ensure that they are there physically and they are ready to learn.
And that is a very important one. But when it comes to learning outside of those four walls of school, if we are to take virtual learning as for instance, but looking at the situation of Nigeria, where we have some, especially rural areas, where they don't have internet connectivity, where a lot of them are not very literate, they are not tech savvy. How do we get education to them outside the four walls of school? Because you did mention that there are places that full-blown war is happening, or war is happening, and yet learning is still taking place. Could we probably just employ some of the strategy they use there to these communities in Nigeria? Is this something you see that could work?
Yes, that what we see that would work. When Comrade was speaking about the fact that we fail to do the right things at the right time, you'll be shocked that the internet in Igbo in Syria is better than our internet in some rural area. So they're still able to access because they've done the work when they needed to do the work. I mean, those are some of the realities. But I mean, I'm excited. Just 2 days ago, I mean, there was the EdTech strategy for collaboration between the Ministry of Education and the Ministry of Communications, the two ministers with support from MasterCard, I believe. There's an EdTech strategy that is being done to ensure that children are able to access education online, virtually. But the baseline infrastructure, they're talking about laying fiber and all of that. So yeah, we're on the way there in terms of ensuring that internet and the infrastructure is there, but it's still not there yet. And so that's one of the key things we need to do. We need to do the right things at the right time, knowing that emergency situations will always happen. So how do we ensure that every community in Nigeria, all 774 local governments, have access to the baseline infrastructure, internet, electricity? These are the basics to ensure that learning can continue at home. But then there's also low-tech solutions, so TV, radio. How can we ensure that those kind of low-tech solutions are also being deployed? And at the worst-case scenario, workbooks. Print workbooks for them to continue to work at home when there are no resources around TV and radio. And this happened in Lagos during COVID. I mean, the Office of Education Policy Assurance printed out workbooks for children in rural parts of Lagos, where the radio school did not reach, and they shared those workbooks for the children to continue to learn at home. So this is not something that hasn't been done before. We can continue to employ those kind of strategies and ensure that our children continue learning.
All right, thank you so much. That's a very beautiful one. So to make us if we have to look at the genesis of attack on schools for you right now, the Boko Haram terrorists, they seem to be against Western education. So despite the fact that this act of kidnapping is not directly linked to that, is it not fearful that this might actually be the realization of their dream come true? Because when children are not able to go to school, no one is considering Western education for a while. And do you think that the government is actually taking education seriously in Nigeria?
Like I used to say, there is nobody in government that is not prepared to take charge of certain responsibility. especially education aid. That's why you see them talking about every successive government will, do their campaign around these major sectors. So definitely, the government is doing a lot. But like I used to say, there's so much class of interest in this country. We need to be sincere with ourselves. Put the nation first, really, beyond our political interests. You see, this emergence of campaign in the middle of every administration, not only about the federal government, because we all center around the federal government. No, even across the states, it's a kind of distraction on its own, and make people to believe that those in government are not really serious. Because if you deliver within 6 months, when people see your work, 6 months to the expiration of your tenure, mind must have been made up on who to remain as a leader, as their leader, rather. So, if we say they are not doing anything, then we are being unfair to bring government. On daily basis, they are doing something. But sometimes we politicize. We want to see how whatever decision we want to take as people in government will enhance our political fortune rather than the fortune of the nation. That has been the clash. We put ourselves first beyond the nation. And that is the reason why we could be alleging in the first place that some of these insecurity issues are political. Anybody in politics to say that, alleging that security issue is political, I think such a person should be relieved of that office. For you to have even considered it, because why are you there in the first place? And if you could, admit that some set of colleagues, because they are the same politicians, are now conniving to endanger the life of the citizen, and we could come out to say that? No. It's unheartful. So, as regards the Boko Haram insurgents, their proclamation is that within the context of their own self-acclaimed religion and faith, because I'm a Muslim, and it's clear within the scripture that they are holding that there is no compulsion in religion. In fact, that was the first revelation to Prophet Muhammad, that no compulsion in religion. There's another verse that says that your religion is yours, mine is mine. So you do your own, I do mine. In the book they profess that they derive their faith. So that's why we must also be careful that we don't allow ourselves to fall into the trap of giving religious connotation to this security challenge we have. It's an attempt for those who are into it to thrive. No religion support, crime. They don't even support offense, talk less of crime. So, with this development, the Boko Haram, whatever strategy, because if we are talking about kidnapping, abduction, or destruction of school infrastructure, different form through which they attack, they are just strategy. Their aim is to suppress Western education. And to me, even though I am not talking as a politician, I want to see the correlation between that objective of Boko Haram and objective of some of our political class. The political class are using two instruments to perpetrate themselves in power. first is poverty. And it is obvious that when people are poor, they don't have decision of their own. That's why the issue of phone buying and phone selling is thriving on daily basis. Even the bargaining is becoming higher. It used to be 5,000. Now it has risen up to 25,000. So politicians would rather sit back, get the data in respect of the numerical strength of the electorate within his own constituency, do the multiplication in naira and kobo, go and provide that fund and sit back. That since he can make such fund available on the day, he will have his way rather than developing the community, because he knows that as a result of poverty, people cannot close their eyes on that day. So they are not ready to solve the problem of poverty. That is one instrument they are using. Second one is ignorance. So in a community, they are using both. In some community, it's either one. So far in the north, they rely more on that ignorance. Because once the elite there, because they have the number within the Almajiris, if they now ensure that more of these Almajiris are educated, then they are going to rise up to challenge them. And the few elite want to dominate. And that's why you see fine, you know, they still operate this Talakawa and big man show. In as much as you can provide food on the table and they eat, they are ready to follow you, even to hell. Whatever you tell them, they don't care that God has created society in such a way that some will have, some will not have. And since you can provide food for them, they are satisfied. Low self-esteem. So it is part of the instrument for the elite to remain relevant in that particular zone of the country, that they may ensure that their people remain ignorant. So, and that's why if somebody says it's political, people who want to remain relevant based on the fact that if their citizens remain uneducated, will readily fund those who will deny the people of that education. So if we now see that, hey, we have had some notable citizens as sponsor of insurgency, and we have not been able to identify, when a particular nation was able to identify those involved in that syndicate in their country, identify them, punish them, and have the list of those who are involved in our own country, even according to information, send it to us. And up to today, nobody has been apprehended. So there is no need to tell us that this problem may continue, not because those Boko Haram insurgents are ordinarily interested in banning Western education, because they are being sponsored by those who are using that denial of Western education within their community as an instrument to remain relevant.
That is definitely clear. So to Mrs. Olito, would you say that perhaps there is a link between out-of-school children menace in Nigeria and also the rise of insecurity?
Yes, so I mean, the out-of-school children numbers in Nigeria, if we dissect those numbers, there are many things that lead to those numbers. And, you know, what I can say is that insecurity is adding a lot to the numbers. Yes, there are other reasons why, you know, children, you know, do not go to school. But as we enter 2025, we have realized that, you know, insecurity as well has led to, you know, a lot of, I mean, to the numbers, you know, going higher. However, the fear of insecurity as well So there's the insecurity, but the fear is now leading to even more of, people not, wanting to send their children to school. For the elites or those that are educated, I mean, I was speaking with the community yesterday, the homeschooling community. It has led to some of the parents saying, you know what, my children are going to school. I'm going to homeschool them. So what kind of infrastructure are we putting in place to ensure that, if homeschooling is going to be an option, how would that, happen, and what structure are we putting in place as government to ensure that, parents that choose to homeschool continue to do that. However, the out of school children numbers, it's alarming. If our children cannot see their classrooms as sanctuaries, because schools are supposed to be a safe place, a safe haven. If we have turned it to a place of fear, it's going to, continue to increase this out of school children numbers we're trying to reduce. I mean, a few months ago, the Almajiri and Out of School Children Commission started mopping up, out of school children to place them in schools. Now, I can imagine the challenges they're going to be facing from parents who would say, please leave my child, let them be illiterate. I'd rather have an illiterate child than a kidnapped child. So it is, that mindset where it is a very dire situation, and it is beyond. We should stop trivializing this issue. We should stop turning it into, political discussions, and we need to just act. This is our future. These children are our future. If they're afraid to go to school, if they're afraid to learn, we would have ignorant children. We would have children that, their self-esteem will be low. So we need, as a nation, to prioritize our future. We need, as a nation, to prioritize our children and ensure that they can see the school as a safe place for them to learn.
All right, thank you so much for that. That has really been interesting, but sadly, we've run out of time. Really, thank you so much. The contribution has been impeccable. I love the one of homeschooling. This is something that a lot of families in regions affected by insecurity should really look into. But that's if the parents are literate.
And it's even expensive. It's expensive.
Yes.
Because we have to hire, good number of teachers in different subject area to be able to meet up. How many parents will be able to afford that? It's elitist.
Thank you so much, Comrade Akintoye Agba, the AMT Chairman of Lagos State. Thank you so much for honoring our call and being here with us today.
You're welcome.
All right, thank you, Mrs. Olariwaju Oniyitan, founder CK and Foundation. We truly, truly appreciate your input. It has really been very educational and interesting.